afternoon. Welcome to our Sunday Sutta study. This is our winter retreat time here at Dhammadharini, and it is also a very special day of the lunar anniversary of the Parinibbana of Mahapajapati Gautami Teri, the founding mother of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, along with the 500 women who ordained with her and also became arahants together and became, well, all entered Parinibbana together on this date. So we're going to have some special recognition of that after our sutta study today. For now, we've moved outside once again with the sacred relics here and the image of Mahapajapati, so we can dedicate our practice today in honor of her, knowing that this would be, what the Buddha or Mahapajapati said was the best way to honor them. The best way to pay homage is through our practice, through our Dhamma growth. So we begin usually with just a few minutes of silent meditation. Let people arrive. Often people are running a little late, so let everybody appear. And we'll just sit for about 10 minutes silently together before we go to our sutta study. Namo Buddhaya. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, thank you all for joining us. We're settling in here to our meditation, to our retreat time. And we've been living in a monastery. There's a lot of things that can sort of get in the way, the distractions, and some internal, some external. And so our suttas today is meant to be helping us to settle in, helping us to clear out all the things that are blocking us from just being, being able to be present, aware, developing in wholesome qualities, decreasing unwholesome qualities, growing in Dhamma. So good sutta for us at this time is we have an opportunity here to be clearing the things out. And we're going to be looking today at the Sabbasava Sutta. I'm sure we've done this one before. It's a famous sutta. I think it will be familiar to some of you. Sabbasava means Sabba is all, and Asava gets translated as taints or defilements or corruptions or cankers. So let's just go to the sutta here and see what it has to say. Okay. Anyway, so I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this. Mendicants, I will teach you the explanation of the restraint of all defilements. Listen and apply your mind well, I will speak. So, Bhante Sujato here has a note. He's the translator. Defilements, asava, are the fundamental pollutions or corruptions that darken awareness, trapping people in transmigration, in samsara. In practical application, asava can mean the discharge from a sore. So like you have a pus coming out of a wound or something, that's asava. It can also be the influx. Things, if you have a wound, then things can get inside. So the influxes or the outfluxes is coming from some sort of dirty wound. That's what the asavas are. So we would like to be without those. The Buddha is going to tell us how to restrain ourselves from them. So listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. Yes, sir, they replied. The Buddha said this. he's going to give a number of different methods here for, for um, giving different. But the mendicants, I say that the ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know or see. For one who knows and sees what? Rational application of mind and irrational application of mind. So this is yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara, sometimes translated as wise attention and unwise attention. So that means attending to things that you shouldn't attend to is irrational application of mind. And attending to things you should attend to is rational application of mind, or wise attention, unwise attention. And why should you or shouldn't you? Well, because when you apply the mind irrationally, when you exercise unwise attention, whereas if you apply the mind rationally, defilements don't arise, and those that have already arisen are given up. So, yeah, it depends how you direct your mind, what develops or what doesn't. So, some defile, some by restraint, some by using, some by avoiding, some by enduring, some by dispelling, and some by developing. So, let's see. So there's 7 methods for 7 different kinds of defilements. And we're going to go through all of them. So this is like different tools to have in your toolbox to know clearly, when you're attending wisely, you can know, oh, which of these should be applying in this particular situation. You have clear comprehension, you may be able to know. Okay. So starting with the defilements given up by seeing. Take an unlearned ordinary person who has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've not seen true persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the true persons. So noble ones or true persons, these are those who have attained some stage of awakening, at least the path to stream entry. They know, they've realized something in the Dhamma. They've realized it for themselves. And they know the way. They're not going to go back again. So these are the noble ones, all the way up to Arahant, fully awakened ones. But if you have an unlearned ordinary person who has not seen or met such people, who doesn't have any clue even of which is the right way to go, then they don't understand to which things they should apply the mind and to which things they should not apply the mind. So they apply the mind to things they shouldn't and don't apply the mind to the things they should. And what are the things to which they apply the mind but should not? They're the things that when the mind is applied to them, give rise to unarisen defilements and make arisen defilements grow. Defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they apply the mind but should not. So this already takes some wisdom to know what are the things that when you pay attention to them, defilements grow. You have to have some clue that you even have control over, any kind of control over defilements growing or not, that is not something that just overcomes you. Okay. All right, I'd like to open it up. What are some things that, when the mind is applied to them, give rise to unarisen defilements and make arisen defilements grow? Has anyone had an experience where they paid attention to something that they shouldn't have? Can you think of an example? Yeah, Daniel.
Definitely, I can think of um, anger arising when attention is paid perhaps to the wrong person or the wrong interaction you had with the particular person, and how you can go from uh, not even contemplating anger to playing out maybe revenge fantasies or frustrations, or, oh, I should have said this, or I didn't say that and I should have, and how quickly that can happen.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Now there's a note in the chat from Crystal who says resentment. So yeah, I think same idea. Um, yeah, our minds just can get drawn into things when somebody has done something that we think is wrong. Then definitely you can get stuck on that. The extent of not seeing anything else about that person, even it's just like you see them and there's only the resentment, and then applying the mind to that again and again, it grows. It's gets worse, not less. Um, any other example? Okay. Well, how about the opposite then? We'll go to the next paragraph here. What are the things to which they do not apply the mind but should? They are the things that when the mind is applied to them do not give rise to unarisen defilements and give up arisen defilements, the defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they do not apply the mind but should. Okay, so what are the things that one could apply the mind to that would help to give up defilements? Thoughts? What would that be? Say you're caught up in resentment, and instead of applying your mind to resentment, what could you do instead?
Apply it to compassion or loving kindness.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And I see some notes in the chat. Acts of generosity, find gratitude. Yeah, absolutely. So these wholesome qualities. You can remember that person's good qualities. Right. So yeah, if somebody has done something that you think is wrong, that you're angry and resentful about, you can, you know, instead of applying your mind to that, you can, you know, not that that doesn't need any attention or care, but not to be making it grow bigger than it is. You can also remember whatever good qualities that person has. You can remember that they are, you know, a living being who wants to be happy and doesn't want pain and suffering, like all of us. Compassion can arise from that. But yeah, so these are some examples. So just to know that you have a choice when a defilement has arisen of how do you direct the mind and either make it grow or not.
Be a bit of a through loving kindness. You really. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing. I was just saying also a neutral object, just feel your hands, feel your feet, let yourself settle down. Sometimes having loving kindness for them is a process, right? You can't always switch immediately. Sometimes you can, sometimes it's really wholesome to look at their positive qualities, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's many, what is it, many tools in our toolbox.
Right, absolutely. So want to keep yeah, so
the space around looking up, getting out of the emotion, right? Bringing space into it.
Yeah.
Feeling the body. Yeah.
So just anything that keeps you from, hammering away at that one thing, any way to step back from that and find space, find a different object, find a different way of looking at things. These can help to and defilements. All right, back to the sutta. Because of applying to the mind what they should not, and not applying the mind to what they should, arisen defilements arise, and arisen defilements grow. This is how they apply the mind irrationally. Okay, so we had some good examples, but here's the Buddha's examples of things you could be unwisely paying attention to. There's actually quite a lot here. So here's some examples of unwise attention. Did I exist in the past? Did I not exist in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? After being what did I become in the past? So, will I exist in the future? Will I not exist in the future? What will I be in the future? How will I be in the future? After being what will I become in the future? Or they may be undecided about the present. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? This sentient being, where did it come from? And where will it go? So, how many of us spend a fair amount of time thinking like this?
Everyone.
Yeah, we're all into our own stories and our plans and, what am I? How am I? What is the core of me? Yeah, Richard, yes, please.
Thank you, Aya. If you think about it, you notice there's a pattern here. On the night of Buddha's enlightenment, he first looked at all of his previous lives. Did I exist in the past, etc.? And then he looked and saw the future of all beings, how they pass away and what they can become. Will I exist in the future? And then the last one, am I not? What am I? How am I? That would be comparable to his enlightenment. That he attained true gnosis, true knowledge. Anyways, I just noticed the pattern. People can agree or disagree, I think. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, these are the questions of our existence, and they are the questions that the Buddha had to wrestle with before his awakening. He had to see a way to come out of all of these questions, because all of them have something basic, some basic sort of mistake of understanding in them. And we can have a lot of dukkha about this, about, about our past, about our present, about who we think we are right now. There can be a lot of dukkha about that. So let's see, what is our mistake here? The Buddha tells us. When they apply the mind irrationally in this way, that is, to those questions, one of the following 6 views arises in them and is taken as genuine fact. So one view is myself survives. This is Bhante Sujata's translation, atti me atta. I think other translators may say, myself exists. I have a self. I think by putting it with survives, Bhante Sujata is trying to point out, that not only is there a self now, but that it will last from life to life. That there's something permanent and unchanging about it that cannot be destroyed, that will go on. So you can have the view that myself exists, myself survives. You could have the view, myself does not survive, natti me atta, I don't have a self. Myself does not exist. Or the view, I perceive the self with the self. Or I perceive what is not self with the self. I perceive the self with what is not self. So these ones are like, if you read the notes here, I'm not going to get all into the notes, but if you're reading the Upanishads and other questions that were being debated in the various Indian philosophical schools at that time, there were views like this about what is the self and how does it perceive and what does it perceive. And it's Richard.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's very important to understand that just like the initial three questions, these are all speculative things by people who don't have experience. Similarly, Buddha describes how certain Brahmins and others were able to perceive like, a previous lifetime up to an aeon or even several aeons, and therefore they developed speculative views based on that experience, but that wasn't a complete experience. So therefore their view is not a complete view, and they're still stuck in ignorance. So in the same way, these specific things here are talking about people who are just kind of speculating in their mind, did I exist before? Will I exist in the future? Am I now? Right? And Buddha says specifically that noble disciples don't ask these type of questions because they realize through their insight that these are all just sort of like, irrelevant, speculative things. So the Buddha himself is not specifically saying any one of these views is good or bad or anything like that. He's just saying that this type of speculation will lead to these type of views becoming your concrete view, your concrete way of, trying to deal with, make sense of reality, but not necessarily truthful at all. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point that these are things spoken by people who don't know. Like the reason they're asking those questions is that we don't actually know and understand how does, we feel like we have a self. There's me here, right? I definitely feel like it. Who else could it be who's walking and talking and all of that? But we don't really understand where that came from. We don't really understand what will happen to it later. We don't really understand what it is now. So then people speculate and they come up with these views and then can find a sense of safety in a view in some way. But if it's not based on real knowledge, then it's not actually going to be a place of safety for them. So anyway, there's 6 views here. I read 5. The 6th one is, this self of mine is he, the one who speaks, the one who knows, who experiences the results of good and bad deeds in all the different realms. This self is permanent, everlasting, eternal, and imperishable, and will last forever and ever. This is called a misconception. The thicket of views, the desert of views, the twist of views, the dodge of views, the fetter of views. An unlearned ordinary person who is fettered by views is not freed from rebirth, old age, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They're not freed from suffering, I say. So, yeah, as long as we're sort of stuck in these ideas, we're stuck in the dukkha of them. Yes, Daniel.
One question I guess I had as I was looking at him is this can seem very kind of philosophically speculative, about our existence and whether we exist or not, and in what ways. And I'm, obviously this is sort of a critique of kind of identity view, if you will. But I'm wondering also, is it appropriate to also understand in the sense of like, I'm thinking the earlier part where they're talking about like, what will I be tomorrow? What was I yesterday? In terms of like, you know, what will I have for lunch tomorrow? Will I get that promotion? What will things look like in a year? What will, et cetera. That's sort of like kind of less perhaps philosophical speculation, but nonetheless sort of uh, ignorant in its own way.
Yes, absolutely. It covers that. Um, it covers all of our plans because what will I have for lunch for tomorrow? Well, what if I die today? Um, you know, then obviously, probably lunch isn't my biggest concern, but it's one of the things that I lose if I die today is my plan about lunch for tomorrow. Um, and you know, and especially plans about your whole life plan. If somebody, we consider it very tragic if like a young person gets sick and they had their whole life ahead of them and then they pass away. That's considered especially um, a tragic thing because they didn't get to live out those plans. They didn't get to experience all of those things. And yeah, so there's a lot of pain in this, in thinking our life is going to be one way and making plans according to that, and then finding out something different happened. Then there's this whole loss of the sense of that future. Where there can be grief over the past, and like this thing I used to have and don't anymore, or this thing that I never had and now never will have. There's on just so many levels. There can be dukkha related to these views about how our lives can or should be, mundane and more profound. Yes, Richard?
Thank you. Daniel's thing falls mainly under the central desire, those first three things that they mentioned in the beginning, Buddha mentioned.
Yeah.
And, your future birth, that's the becoming, right? And then ignorance is kind of like everything kind of falls under that umbrella, right? But that's, I think it was number 6 or something, that section you were just at there below, where the person says, myself will last forever. Where is that one? Yeah, this self of mine is he, the one who speaks, the one who knows, who experiences, etc., will last forever and ever. The problem with this speculative view is, as Buddha's going to mention, it doesn't free you from birth and death. So this view is kind of like there are some philosophers or even mystics and stuff that comes to the point of like, hey, it's all just a game. So you got to learn to play the game, and there's good and bad in it, right? But it's just going to go on and on forever and ever. So there's no real worry, right? It's kind of like playing a video game where your character dies, but you get a new life right away. Your character dies, you get a new life right away. So it's that type of mentality that's being talked about here, that hey, it's just a game. Just keep playing the game. Yeah, there's some good and bad, some pains and suffering, whatever, but overall there's enjoyment and other things too. So just keep going along. Anyways, that's my view. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. So, right. Anyway, yes, for Daniel, definitely, like these mundane things count. They're part of this. And especially as we start in our meditation retreat, then I think these are especially relevant. We have all this time to sort of settle and be quiet, and then what comes up? Well, it's stories about the past and the future, and how everything used to be and how everything's going to be, and what I am right now, and whether I'm a good meditator or not, and whatever, right? All this stuff, it gets in the way. Gets in the way of like being here now with awareness. Anyway, I want to get to the person with wise attention. And then we have 6 more kinds of ways of removing defilements. So we'll go through this section and then move on. Okay. So we talked about the person with the unlearned ordinary person. And now we have the contrast. Take a learned noble disciple who has seen the noble ones and is skilled and trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've seen true persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of the true persons. They understand to which things they should apply the mind and to which things they should not apply the mind. So they apply the mind to things they should and don't apply to the mind to things they shouldn't. And what are the things to which they don't apply the mind and should not? The things that cause defilements to arise and grow. That is sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they don't apply the mind and should not. What are the things to which they do apply the mind and should? They are the things that when the mind is applied to them do not give rise to unarisen defilements and give up arisen defilements. So again, defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they do apply the mind and should. So they're practicing in a way that reduces defilements by directing their attention. Because of not applying the mind to what they should not and applying to mind what they should, unarisen defilements don't arise, and arisen defilements are given up. Okay, so, and here's what they're attending to. It's not who am I, what did I used to be, what am I going to be? What they are applying their minds to is, this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. So this is the Four Noble Truths. That's what they're applying their minds to. And as they apply their minds to that, they give up three fetters. Sakkaya Ditthi, substantialist view, doubt, and misapprehension of precepts and observances. So this is a description of stream entry. Somebody who has clearly seen and understood the Four Noble Truths and who has given up the first three fetters here through that seeing, through applying their mind to Four Noble Truths, through seeing them clearly, then these three fetters fall away. And the first of these, Sakkaya Ditthi, again, this is a term that has many different translations. We go to different translators. Adisajatu here has substantialist view, or like personality view, self view, there's various ones out there. It's sort of the idea that I am like this. And I used to be like that, and I will be like that another time. It's right, sort of a view that there is some core essence of who I am that needs to be like bound and protected and is unchanging. The view that I have a personality and it's permanent. So this is directly related to previous set of questions. Those would fall away. So any further comments here? We could talk much more about this, but I do want to get to the other parts of the sutta. Just any brief comments here? All right. So instead of getting all into those questions, we can be attending to what is causing our defilements to grow or decrease, what is causing our suffering to arise or to cease. Okay. So next set, those are the defilements to be given up by seeing, all those questions about view, about who am I, what am I. Next set, defilements to be given up by restraint. What are the defilements that should be given up by restraint? Take a mendicant who, rationally reflecting, lives restraining the faculty of the eye. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without restraint of the eye faculty do not arise when there is such restraint. Okay. Bhante Sujata's note, since restraint is not about denial, but about freeing the mind from addiction. You know, the eye to be sort of running around looking at this and that and the other thing. You know, like for instance, the monastics go out for alms round. The traditional training is that you kind of look down while walking through the town with the alms bowl. And you know, it's true when we go out in the world, you know, you can notice the difference between the monastery and the town street. All like the shop windows and the displays and things that are supposed to look sort of shiny and interesting and grab your eye and make you think, oh, I should go in there and spend some money. You know, those things are designed for grabbing the eye and pulling you in. And the training in restraint is not to like never look at anything, never enjoy anything, but to avoid that sort of catch of like, ooh, this looks really good. I better go put my money, put my life energy, put whatever it is into pursuing that, which is not ultimately going to be satisfying. Giving up the sort of addictive tendencies with the eye to sort of pull you towards what seems desirable and gratifying. Similarly, they live restraining the faculty of the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without restraint of the mind faculty do not arise when there is such restraint. So giving up defilements in this sutta in some places means their permanent eradication by means of the noble path. But here we're talking about in the interim. Giving up refers to the more modest goal of practicing so that they don't arise in the mind. This creates the supportive conditions for deeper realizations while giving the mind time for understanding to mature. So this is sort of a temporary giving up of defilements through restraint, just to give yourself enough space to be present rather than being dragged in all directions by the senses every moment and getting excited about it, you know, either in terms of what's pleasant or not. Distressing and feverish defilements, he says. So yeah, becoming passionate about something or becoming upset about something that you see or hear or think or taste. Okay. Questions here? Anyway, sense restraint being a very classical part of the renunciation of monastic life, also of retreat time. Like it's normal to be giving up entertainments and adornments and various things when settling into a retreat time. It's like giving space from those, whether that's just the space of your own, you know, attention, or whether it's a space of a building, a room, a literal space where those things are not there so much. But these are helpful to not be getting drawn in every direction every moment. Yes, Richard.
Well, thank you, Aya. These restraints of the senses, Buddha describes that the noble disciple, when they go on alms round, which he describes as the best right livelihood, that they're supposed to restrain the senses like this. And this sets the stage once their senses are not getting distracted, and so a lot of distracting thoughts are not coming up in the mind, then they can go into the mind deeper and go to from the fifth stage of the path to the sixth stage, which is right effort, where one tries to make sure that only wholesome thoughts come up in the mind, which would be, thoughts about the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and attaining Nibbana. But anyways, but this sets you in the right, when you perfected this, and you're able to start moving into the sixth stage. So you've gone, now you have noble right, fifth path factor of right livelihood. Anyways, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next. Defilements to be given up by using. What are the defilements that should be given up by using? A mendicant who, reflecting rationally, makes use of robes only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, and for covering up the private parts. Reflecting rationally, they make use of alms food, not for fun, indulgence, adornment, or decoration, but only to sustain this body, to avoid harm, to support spiritual practice. In this way, I shall put an end to the old discomfort of hunger and not give rise to new discomfort of overeating. And I will have the means to keep going, blamelessness, and a comfortable abiding. Reflecting rationally, they make use of lodgings, only for the sake of warding off cold and heat, for warding off the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, to shelter from harsh weather, and to enjoy retreat. Reflecting rationally, they make use of medicines and supplies for the sick, only for the sake of warding off the pains of illness and to promote good health. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without using these things do not arise when they are used. So these reflections are things that many monastic communities chant daily. Most monastics will have these memorized, at least the alms food one, which is often chanted before the meal. And but yeah, it's interesting that he's referring to these things as ways of avoiding defilements. So what does that mean? Just before we got to this section, I put my shawl on here, getting a little chilly. So that's me making use of robes for the sake of warding off cold. And, why should I do that? Well, if I were cold, then I would be sitting here feeling like, I'm cold, I don't like being cold, right? I would be feeling aversive towards that. And that would be a distraction for me, potentially, from engaging with all of you, with this sutta. I would be sort of just thinking about how I'm cold. Whereas I have a shawl here, it's easy enough to put it on, it's easy enough to be comfortable. And then I don't have to worry too much about the cold. So yeah, the Buddha is not praising just putting up with discomfort and pain. Like famously he taught the middle way. He did not approve of extreme ascetic practices. He also did not approve of indulgence in sense pleasures. And, it's sort of hard to know where exactly is the line between indulging in sense pleasures and ascetic practice. And it's going to be different for different people, like, depending on your health and well-being, like, especially as people get older, then or people who are sick, things like that may need a higher level of comfort just to sort of be okay. In a way. But and that's good and useful. And if we're hungry and there's food, we can eat it. And that's useful and good. Likewise, if there's a building, if there's a shelter, we can go inside and be sheltered and be secluded. And that's good. Richard?
Thank you. Yeah, you can see that these are all wholesome thoughts. So it's not that you neglect your physical, situation or anything like that. Buddha's not saying that that's, unwholesome to even think a slight thought about, okay, I'll put on my shawl or something to stay warm. So it's not distracting. No, these are examples of wholesome thoughts, as opposed to having thoughts like, oh, I wish I had that beautiful new shawl. I would look so good in that, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. When the shawl starts to become a fashion statement, in monastic life also we can
Right.
think, oh, it's not quite matching color. What if I had a better matching shawl?
Anyway, so this is an example of the sixth path factor, letting wholesome thoughts, arise instead of unwholesome. Anyways, that's my conclusion.
Yeah, definitely. It's using these things for wholesome reasons to like take care of ourselves. It's like being a good host. If you have a guest, you would want to make sure that they have enough blankets and that they have enough food and things. We're not to say we're perfect at it here, but we have a lot of guests, and we always try to make sure that we check, are they warm enough? Do they get food that is possible for them to eat? Do they need medicine? This is sort of part of our training in monastic life, and just for general human purposes, that we try to treat people well, make sure that they have what they need to live. This is basic human kindness, and we're applying it towards ourselves in this case. That if we can use these things, and we don't have to go beyond that. We don't have to get into the fashion and the the luxury and the excitement, and the food doesn't have to be like really fancy, exciting food. It just needs to be enough to live, right? Enough to live and be healthy. And if we're using things in this way, then that should reduce our defilements, because we're neither running after the fancy, exciting things, nor depriving ourselves such that we're living in unnecessary discomfort and pain that then, that has like a psychic load to it that distracts, that pulls us away from peace and ease.
I'll just add one thing, which is just an elaboration on what you're saying, which is just, I mean, these four categories of things, right, can consume so much time and so much energy. So, I mean, so much money going to nice restaurants and cooking nice food and having a nice house, and, the wellness gurus, how much time can be spent like doing all these various things for our health and well-being, and food, shelter, clothing. Obviously, I mean, the fashion industry is one of the things that's destroying our environment, right? One of the fundamental things, because we're so captured by how we look or whatever. And so it's like, are we eating to live, right? Or are we living to eat? And are we just using our shelter in a functional way? Or are we, using all our energy to make it really beautiful and kind of glittery? So I think it's a really important basis for a monastic life, but also a spiritual life. It takes time and dedication to purify the mind and the heart. And if we're putting our energy into these external things and our time and our money, then there's not much left for us to do the deeper work. But also, that's the way as well. A lot of people don't even have the basics in our world. And so when we take too much for ourselves as a nation or whatever, then it also causes a lot of suffering on a global level. Not that this is talking about that global level, but it is a really fundamental point, these 4 requisites and how we relate to them and how that affects what we can do with our lives. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So the call towards simplicity, towards just enough, and then beyond that, not putting any more energy into it, just letting that energy be for our practice, be for our clarity. So defilements which should be given up by using. Okay, so this one comes first, and then the next one is sort of a pair with it. Defilements should be given up by enduring. What are the defilements that should be given up by enduring? Take a mendicant who, reflecting rationally, endures cold, heat, hunger, and thirst. They endure the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles. They endure rude and unwelcome criticism, and they put up with physical pain, sharp, severe, acute, unpleasant, disagreeable, and life-threatening. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without enduring these things do not arise when they are endured. So this is the flip side of it. What if I didn't have my shawl here and it was cold? And, there was just nothing to be done about it. Obviously, it depends how cold. Like if I'm about to get hypothermia and there's a building over there, I could go get a shawl. But, it's not that sort of life-threatening situation right here and now. But if I hadn't had my shawl right here, I could have sat through it. And if I sit through the cold, then I should not be spending my time thinking, oh, it's so cold. I'm so cold, so cold. I don't like this. I wish I weren't so cold. The mind gets like this, right? It gets caught up in these things, these uncomfortable things. So this includes cold, heat, hunger, thirst, irritating things, flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, rude and unwelcome criticism. So here we're getting beyond the physical and like the mental things, and physical pain, right? There are times we cannot avoid these things. There will always be times when we cannot avoid these things, when we just have to be cold, when people are just criticizing, when the body just hurts. This is normal that in a human life there would be times like that. Even if we're doing our best to, give up defilements by using in the previous one, doing our best to set things up so that we can live a simple, comfortable life. Still, there will be times when that's not so, when it's not comfortable. And in that case, that's the case where we need to endure. And we need to not be just focusing on it, applying the mind in such a way that aversion is growing, that hatred is growing, that greed is growing. Right? So, yeah, we need to practice both because this life is never going to be fully satisfying. It's never going to be fully comfortable. And we need to learn to be okay within it. We need to learn to endure when the things are uncomfortable. Richard.
Thank you. I just want to point out again, this is Path Factor 6, keeping the unwholesome thoughts from arising.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Path Factor 6 is right effort. And I think the sutta in general is quite a bit about right effort. About preventing unwholesome things from arising is one of the 4 right efforts. I see a few things in the chat. Okay. All right. Any further comments about this one? We've got 2 more, 3 more. All right. I've got a few more minutes. So, enduring what must be endured. Next, defilements given up by avoiding. What are the defilements that should be given up by avoiding? Take a mendicant who, reflecting rationally, avoids a wild elephant, a wild horse, a wild ox, a wild dog, a snake, a stump, thorny ground, a pit, a cliff, a swamp, and a sewer. So, avoiding dangers that you don't have to unnecessarily expose yourself to. Including physical dangers. Also, reflecting rationally, they avoid sitting on inappropriate seats, walking in inappropriate neighborhoods, and mixing with bad friends. Whatever sensible spiritual companions would believe to be a bad setting. So both physically and sort of socially, spiritually, they are avoiding dangers. They're avoiding things that are going to predictably cause some issues for them, either physically or in terms of drawing them away from their spiritual life. They can just stay away. And if they just stay away, then the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without avoiding these things do not arise when they're avoided. So, yeah, again, this is very relevant to meditation, very relevant to retreat. Like, we need to come to a place that's quiet and safe, and where the other people around are aligned with what we're doing in some way. Because if they're not, then it's very hard to really settle the mind if there's dangers on every hand, or or if there's people around who are not aligned with what you're doing and trying to convince you to do otherwise. Hard to meditate. We have all sorts of defilements that can arise from that. So again, this is like as much as possible. I think some of this might, you're not always going to be able to avoid the wild elephant, right? The wild elephant has its own mind, it's doing its own thing, and disasters happen. But you can do some things to protect yourself. Like, you can try to avoid, and this is recommended, to try to avoid things that are predictably have a risk of harming you. Okay, any comment here? All right, so then these three are the sort of physical, external ones. So the ones to be avoided by using, by enduring, and by avoiding. These are like about making our environment as conducive as possible, and letting go of whatever is left over. Richard, is that a hand, or is that your previous hand?
Yes, I have. Anyways, with this one, it's still similarly the same thing, factor 6 in terms of reflecting rationally. But sometimes in Buddhism, you might hear things like don't criticize others and things like that. And someone might look at this and say, they avoid walking in inappropriate neighborhoods or mixing with bad friends or sitting in inappropriate seats, right? Or like that. And so on the surface, that might sound like you're being judgmental or something about others, but it's not in the sense of condemning. You're just being aware that there's might be danger for you in those situations. That's all. So you're rational. That's why it's saying, reflecting rationally. You're just using, your rational ability to observe things to the best of your ability, and see what's actually going on. It's no different than the beginning ones. Avoiding a snake, a stump, a thorny ground, a pit, a cliff. It's just a swamp, a sewer. You just think, oh, who am I to condemn a sewer, or who am I to condemn a swamp? You're not condemning it or anything. You're just saying, hey, it would not be very conducive for my welfare to go in that direction. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. It's not condemnation. It's just clarity about what's going to be supportive for you or not, and avoiding it if it's predictably not aligned with your goals. If your goal is spiritual development and practice, then maybe you're not going to go wandering around downtown clubbing. Maybe that would not be suitable for your time of spiritual practice. And yeah, so that's it. It's not terrible if people do that, but
yeah, I just want to say I think Richard's making a really important point. It's not about not using discernment and not being able to see clearly. I think often, there's sort of spiritual bypassing and all these funny ideas like we're not allowed views and opinions, but we are. I mean, that's how we function. It's just about being open to other perspectives. But the Buddha always, even giving a Dhamma talk, right, he had a particular setup. So you don't just talk to people who don't want to listen to you and don't have that respect in their heart because they won't listen. And the Buddha himself, when there was those monks who were quarreling and they didn't listen to him, he walked away. And I don't know, Richard, maybe, I don't know if you're touching on the same thing that I was feeling coming up hearing that, which is sometimes we're expected to be able to handle everything, and that idea of really using our discernment and really creating wholesome environments and really avoiding environments that might be psychologically damaging, or even acknowledging that they are. Sometimes somehow people feel uncomfortable around that, but it's not really within Buddhism. Actually, we're allowed to make those calls. So, and context is so important, and creating context is so important. So, yeah, just to second that.
Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, creating context definitely is what this is about.
Decisive that runs.
All right. So this is about our external context. And let's go on to the next. We've only got 10 minutes left. We have 2 more kinds of defilements. So defilements to be given up by dispelling. So now we're going to the internal context. Take a mendicant who, reflecting rationally, doesn't tolerate a sensual, malicious, or cruel thought that has arisen, but gives it up, gets rid of it, eliminates it, and obliterates it. They don't tolerate any bad, unskillful qualities that have arisen, but give them up, get rid of them, eliminate them, and obliterate them. For the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without dispelling these things do not arise when they are dispelled. So, as much as we're keeping our environment as conducive and safe and comfortable and simple as possible externally, we need to also be looking internally. When these things do arise, we should be able to recognize them, and we should try to dispel them. We should be able to recognize sensual, malicious, or cruel thoughts. And this is easier said than done. And there's like a whole sequence here, right? Give up sounds fairly gentle. Get rid of, it's a little stronger. Eliminate, obliterate. So there's another sutta that gives the different methods of dispelling thoughts, and starting with more gentle ones and going down to stronger and stronger ones. Eventually, you just sort of grit your teeth and crush mind with mind. But that's the last resort. Do you have any comment on this?
Only a brief comment, which is, it's really interesting that in this sutta and in general, you're dealing with the bigger context first before you get to the mind. It's just the same point that Richard was maybe making and I was making. It's not about working with the mind so you can handle any situation. It's about trying to be in a situation that's more conducive to peace, and of course doing everything you can with that, and then working with the mind. And sometimes indeed we don't have any choice, but to the degree that we have choice and ability, then that's the order from gross to subtle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if this is kind of relevant, but I was in quite a tricky situation a few years ago, and I was talking to Ujaga about it. and how I could sit and have a lot of loving kindness and let go of all my defilements. But as soon as I came out of my sitting, everything came crashing back. And he basically said, well, you got to look at your context first. You don't just meditate it all away. It's from the gross to the subtle. If you stay in that situation, you're going to have a nervous breakdown, get out of it. And sometimes we have no choice. But really, like even very wise teachers and the Buddha, they are not recommending just watching the mind as the first course of action. So, yeah.
So this kind of practice of dispelling then becomes possible when when you've set up the groundwork for it, I think is basically it, or becomes sustaining. And yes, Richard.
Thank you, Anne. So this is the culmination of the sixth path factor. When you're dealing purely with the thoughts that arise in the mind that are unskillful, and so you make those go away and only allow skillful thoughts to arise. And all the things before this, the very beginning, becoming a noble disciple, and then all the things, right livelihood, and then all the more gross, you might say, factors of wholesomeness, developing a wholesome mind. Now you're down to the point where you're really working with very specific thoughts. Any strange thought that appears, you try to crush it and suppress it. And I haven't read the sutta for a while. Maybe below this they're going to start talking about you bring up wholesome thoughts or something, I would assume. But that's what you're doing. You're now transitioning your mind completely. And when you can do that completely, when only wholesome thoughts arise in your mind, then you've perfected the sixth path factor, and you have noble right effort, which then allows you, Buddha says, you're able to sleep at night peacefully and calmly with no disturbance in your mind or anything like that. In other words, he's setting the stage. He's letting you know. So your mind, and you don't have any regrets. You don't feel bad or anything about, oh, I did this wrong or that wrong, or I had this wrong thought or anything like that. So with that peacefulness of mind, you can now approach what's called mindfulness, sati, and start those practices, because your mind's going to be very peaceful, calm, joyful, and undistracted. And Buddha says, for one who is glad, a samadhi, the eighth path factor, sati being the seventh, is not far away. So this is a whole development here going on from right view all the way through to the monastic lifestyle and the perfection of right livelihood, and then how you approach everything and developing your skillfulness, right? And skillful mind, and then sati, and then your meditation perfection. Anyways, that's my view. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you. And yes, you have correctly anticipated what is the last one of these methods. So let's go down to the final one. So there's the defilements to be given up by dispelling, which is the sensual, malicious, cruel thoughts, bad, unskillful qualities. And then defilements given up by developing. What are the defilements that should be given up by developing? It's when a mendicant, reflecting rationally, develops the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation of principles, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, and equanimity, which rely on seclusion, fading away, and cessation, and ripen as letting go. So, again, you could have a whole teaching series on these 7 factors of awakening. But yes, basically, in developing these, relying on seclusion, fading away in cessation, ripening as letting go. This is how, all of the defilements eventually go. The awakening factors, when they're really highly developed, when they imbue the mind, then that's a mind that is capable of awakening. It's a mind that is, these are the factors that exist in an awakened mind, and also factors that lead towards awakening. So for the distressing and feverish defilements that might arise in someone who lives without developing these things, do not arise when they are developed. And this one can be the permanent change, not just the temporary restraint or temporary avoiding or enduring. It's like this is when those defilements can really be truly given up, is through the development of these awakening factors and through right view. So the first of these methods, the seeing, and the final one, the developing, these are the ones that are related to the breakthrough, where defilements can end and not return, whereas the others are more about like temporarily calming them down, so that we have the space to practice. Okay, almost out of time, but we're almost to the end of the sutta, so let me just go to the end here. So take a mendicant who by seeing has given up the defilements that should be given up by seeing. By restraint, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by restraint. By using, by enduring, by avoiding, by dispelling, by development, they've given up the defilements that should be given up by those things. They're called a mendicant who lives having restrained all defilements, who has cut off craving, cast off the fetters, and rightly comprehending conceit has made an end of suffering. So fully ending defilements is equivalent with awakening, equivalent with the end of suffering. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants approved what the Buddha said. Oh, we have come to the end of our time here. Are there any final comments? Yes, Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, going back to the beginning, where Buddha talks about the Four Noble Truths and the breakthrough to the Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
Way up in the very beginning.
Yeah, no, it's down here.
Yeah, there we go. And so you give up the three fetters. So giving up the three fetters means that you've become a noble disciple, right? Sotapan, or as I prefer to say, a hearing entrer. Because you've heard the Dharma and it's penetrated through and you've had a vision. That's right view. You've had a vision of it. So this is the secret to this process. One may be wondering, well, how do I become a Sotapan? Well, here it is, right here. A couple of lines, he gives it very clearly, right? If you see this clearly, right, you'll get it. Now, there's a famous story about Asaji meeting Sariputta, and Sariputta asked him for a concise description of the Dharma, and so basically he says, in his own words, the origin of suffering, all dhammas subject to arising, right, are also subject to cessation. So that's compared to Noble Truth number 2 and Noble Truth number 3. And so there's a big question that's gone on philosophically. Well, why didn't he mention suffering, Noble Truth number 1? It's because Sariputta was already a monastic. He wasn't a Buddhist monastic. And the motivation for becoming a monastic was to end suffering, regardless of whether you had a right way of doing it or a wrong way of doing it or something like that, right? So that's not necessary. And this is why in the first sutra, when Buddha is teaching the 5 ascetics, and he teaches them the Four Noble Truths, and Kondona says, all dhammas, right, dependently arisen, are also subject to arising, are also subject to cessation. So it's that same concept. That is the concept, that's the breakthrough idea, and you see that in many, many suttas, and in the Vinaya. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly because I'm not educated, but you see that also in the Mahakanda, where they're going through the history of Buddha's realization and then his initial disciples and everything. That's the thing that the Sotapans always say. That's the conclusion that arises in their mind when they view the Dharma. So anyways, it's the same thing right here. So really focusing on the Noble Truths will help you break through. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And I think definitely this whole sutta is aligned with that. It's like seeing the arising of defilements and seeing that they can cease, that there's ways to practice towards their cessation. That is really the whole point here. And so this is what we're doing. This is what we're aiming for during this time, and well, all the time, but especially during our retreat time. This is a good framework for us here, and hopefully also for you. And but we are at the end of our time, so we can close by paying our respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then afterwards we're going to take a little break. But those who wish are welcome to come back and join us again at 3. That's 26 minutes from now. And we'll have a little time to go to me in the founding 500 bhikkhunis with some devotional chanting and some meditation. It will be simple, but we'll come back for that in about half an hour. And for now, we can close. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagawa Buddhang Bhagawantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your patient listening, and hope to see a few of you back in about a little less than half an hour.